Hello and happy Monday. My topic for the day is going to be a different one. It will be on the topic of 75 hard, which you either have heard of or not, so obviously. But that is a 75-day challenge. I don't have the intention of making a lot of challenge-based videos, but I might. They're fun to reflect on, and I think almost all of them have some sort of mental health or cognitive implication. A lot of challenges in the way that they're made is to push you, which is almost always a mental thing, almost always, even if there's big physical components to it. So, for people who don't know, 75 Hard is a 75-day challenge that requires you to take a progress picture of yourself every day, pick a diet and stick to it. And the way that I understand it is no alcohol at all, plus picking a diet and sticking to it. It is doing 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes each. One of them has to be outside. Read 10 pages of nonfiction personal growth development. So it doesn't have to be self-help, but just developmental based nonfiction, 10 pages a day, and then drink a gallon of water. And you do that for 75 days. If you miss any of those on accident, you start the entire thing over from day one. So if you forget to take a progress picture before you go to bed, you wake up the next morning, you're on day 60, you start back on day one. It's a no exception thing. It is one that I know people cut corners on, but like with anything, you shouldn't do that. So 75 days of that. So progress picture, the diet. So for me, the progress picture is as it was. Take a picture, some sort of selfie, more or less, or mirror reflection picture. That's the first thing. Second piece is the diet. So for me, of course, no alcohol for 75 days. And I also chose to do no caffeine at all for that entire time. And I'll talk about these more in a second. The 2 workouts are pretty self-explanatory. 2 45 minutes, one outside, one inside. Well, they can both be outside. One has to be outside. So a lot of walks that I went on for that. 10 pages of development. That also wasn't very hard for me. I like that kind of reading overall. So I had some options there. And then the gallon of water. So I will explain a little bit about how I see the mental health connection to all of that. And I believe the creator of that, Andy Frisella, who also owns, I believe, Supplement Superstore chain and First Form, is describing it more as being a mental challenge than a physical one. There are a lot of physical components, but I understood it as the goal being to do something different with your body in a way that challenges your mind to keep with some sort of consistency every day. And specifically with the elements of starting over if you mess up at all is, to me, meant to communicate like this is something that you do pretty much religiously and you get through it, and to push you no matter what, especially the outdoor workouts. I know I've heard people I've talked to or heard do this. I believe progress pictures are what I've heard people messing up on the most, the easiest part of all of it, which is just do that simple thing, which I think is very reflective of a lot of habit building, as we often slip on the very easy things that we shouldn't, like just, sometimes basic hygiene or sending a text to a friend to say hi and keep that relationship going, so that doesn't take long at all and we just put it off because it feels so light. So I think that's a really good one to have in there. And then also I know a lot of people really struggle with the daily workout because 75 days, you're gonna often shift seasons. And for the season that I did it in, it was some days in the rain and some days in really bad heat. So I tried to get up early and do walks in the morning to start my outdoor. And then there were a couple moments in the rain as well. But I know people skimp on that one too, and they'll, not really do an outdoor workout. They'll start outside and come in and be like, yeah, I did it. And then I think the nonfiction can be tough in its own way. For me, I wanted to really keep that rule in line that he set in place of this is supposed to develop you in some way. So I can't really glean anything from my own life. I wasn't going to count. So biographies were 100% off the table. Just any book on, I guess I shouldn't say any. I'll tell you what I did read. I read a lot of books that were more faith-based, spirituality-based, and then some books on creativity as well. And there's also some business books and psych books for my field and all of that, taking in to be better at the life that I'm choosing to live and not trying to cherry pick. That's why I didn't do biographies, because you can glean a lot from biographies, but they're not really designed to make your life better. And so it was more about that, taking stuff in that I could apply in my day-to-day and make myself better. So, and I do feel like this is a mental challenge overall. It was definitely getting to the point at the end where I just didn't want to do it. Like, it wasn't physically exhausting. It was just, I'm ready to be done. And I'm glad I did it. I've actually attempted this before in the past, to be fully transparent on that, maybe 2 or 3 times, and just was like, meh. I mean, the most recent one, like 5 years ago. And I just wasn't really super into it, even doing it with a friend at one point who I kind of backed out on, and I'm sorry if she ever watches. So that was different this time. And I did it with my wife this time around. We were both interested in it, and neither of us had a single day to start over, which I think is pretty cool. So we started day 1 and ended day 75. There was not a single miss in there, and it was helpful to remind each other and encourage. And we had a printout. I brought it. And this was, I think, a saving grace to print this sheet out and essentially check off every single time we did something on it. So there's 6 items in there because of the workout happening twice. And then no alcohol, no caffeine is my personal note to myself. So that, I think, for me is the way to do it, a visual tracker. And if those aren't checked off before I go to bed, I know I haven't done it yet. So that's helpful. And there were a couple close call days where I was like, oh shoot, I need to do this. And a couple late night workouts, a couple evenings where I chugged too much water and was up throughout the night peeing. And progress, pick one. I had a couple, like, I don't know, and I ended up just taking a second picture, even though I have a camera roll. Like, that's an easy one just to do again, just in case. So it was just a good process, though, overall. And I was also dieting in another way during the whole thing. So I ended up losing a ton of weight during it, which I don't think was fully related to that. I was just shifting how I'm doing my workouts overall and how I'm eating. So I cut some weight during this as well. So I kind of threw in my own diet during. And overall, I don't necessarily think this is something that everyone should do. Generally speaking, I'm not someone who says people should do challenges flippantly. And I think the reason for that is it's a commitment. And anytime that you tell someone that they should commit to something, I think that should be thought through, because we feel it when we back out on a commitment. If I say I'm going to do something that I don't, it's not good for you as a person to be that way. It's really good to make commitments you can follow through on and think through, can I do this? Do I have the capacity in life to do this? And then you follow through. And that's, I think, really hard if we're not considering what we're committing to. And we have, in my opinion, in the US at least, a big issue with lack of commitment as a personal thing. People will do really good at it in some areas, but a lot of that comes from the overall selfishness of our society. People will commit and then they don't feel like it anymore, so they'll just say no. And you see that a lot with like divorce rates, and you see it a lot with how people are constantly asking, like, how do I get out of this party or this group or this thing? And that's a combination. That's really an honesty issue at the end of the day. Selfishness is in there as well, but to be more selfless to people and try to be more giving, as well as to think through your yes before you say yes, and think through your no before you say no. Because I also don't think it's good to backtrack on a no and say yes. There are obvious times where changing your mind is okay, or needing to reassess is okay. My general philosophy for commitments is if I've committed with something to do something and I want to change or something came up, I will ask whoever I've committed to permission to do the other thing or to back out. It's pretty rare that I'll just say, actually, sorry, no, I'm not going to do this after I said I would. Now, sometimes life happens and I struggle with it and I fail the commitment. I don't usually back out though. Like there's a couple things I can think of right now that actually there's immediate things I can think of that I needed to get done and sent to people earlier and I just haven't, and that sucks and I don't like it. And they will still get done. So to me it's a bit of a little character flaw there, breaking that commitment by mistake. I will finish it, but I was wrong about the timeline I gave. So I don't like that either. But I lean more that, like, I still want to finish and follow through with what I say, even if I can't always promise the timelines the way that I want to. So, but this was something that we did in one try and knocked it out, 75 days completed. We finished it this past Tuesday. So, sitting on about a week. I recorded my video last Monday and we had one more day left of it. Wednesday morning was the first day. And I was really curious what it would be like to stop. Wednesday I didn't work out at all, and that felt, to me that actually felt good. My wife's had more of a wanting to stay in the movement bug, and I still want to be moving around, and I have a new workout plan that I'm going to be starting, and I'm going to be doing stuff, every day. I've still decided to at least be walking or working out in some capacity daily. That's still important to me. So I'll be doing that still. That was an interesting one to end. That one just felt good to stop. Progress pick was easy to end. The diet was easy transition as well. Having been off caffeine, I'm going, as of now, to not get back on it. I don't have a plan to drink caffeine. I'll see if that changes, but I do think for anyone who has anxiety or deals with that, trying to stay away from caffeine is pretty helpful, and that is something that I will often ask people in a clinical setting when we talk about substance use, is how much caffeine they're taking in daily, because it's not really that good for you. And our culture is very reliant on caffeine, but it's a drug at the end of the day, and it's one that a lot of us really don't need. We just need better lifestyle habits, like better sleep, better diets, oftentimes less stress. Caffeine is a tool that can help, but I don't really think it's something that we should be reliant on. And I know most people are not necessarily dependent where they're going to have withdrawal symptoms, but they use it a lot. But definitely, if you're curious if you're addicted to caffeine, stop taking it for a week and see if you have a physiological response in the negative, and you're probably going through withdrawal. So that's a physical dependency. But this was good for me not being on caffeine. I don't want to. I don't care if other people use it, because I'm about to say something judgmental of myself. I don't care if other people use it, but for me it feels like a crutch. Like, I don't want to do that if I don't have to. Like, I don't just want to be drinking it. And if there's a certain day where I really have to be up and stay up for something, or I'm just so lethargic I need to take something, I'm not opposed to it. But the idea for me is a lifestyle change where that isn't a necessary thing in any way. And then I was also just not drinking coffee during that whole time at all. I do like the taste of coffee, so decaf was off the table for me. I just took it off. And probably not going to drink as much of that either. But I am a coffee person, so that's an interesting mix. I don't want to do caffeine, but I like coffee. And I like a good mixed, I was going to say like a mixed drink, I meant more like a cappuccino or a latte or something like that. So we'll see about the caffeine piece. And then the no alcohol, I was curious how my body would respond, because I'm not like a heavy drinker, but this is the longest time I've gone without drinking since I started drinking. And I was really curious what it would be like to have a drink. And so we were out to dinner with family celebrating a birthday 2 days after this ended. So last day was on Tuesday, we went out to dinner on a Thursday, and I got an old fashioned. And I was really curious how my body would respond, because I've heard dramatic moments of people like just feeling totally sick when they get off something and back on, and felt fine, and the next day felt fine. And then I think it was Saturday night, I just had a glass of whiskey, which was 100 proof. And I was like, I wonder how that's going to sit. Fine. So that was really interesting. I expected some sort of physiological response or to feel not great, but I felt totally fine. And I've been leaning more into the research on alcohol usage in general, and pretty much aim for no more than 2 drinks a week, which seems to be a lot of the science before you start to see issues in the brain in terms of destruction on your body. So again, not super avid drinker, and I aim for no more than 2 drinks a week. So yeah, I just expected more of a physiological response than I actually had. So that one was, I think, the most surprising when I got done. I thought it'd be one day of feeling a little bit as I got back into it, but nope, not at all. The workouts, I talked about those. 10 pages was another one that was pretty easy. It depends on the book, and I have 2 books that I've read before, and I was fine rereading books. I didn't see anything that said you couldn't read old books or read the same book over and over the whole time. I did want to stay away from that, so during the 75 days, if I finished a book, I was not going to reread it, which might seem obvious for some people, but there are 2 books I have that are really easy reads that I've read before, and they were kind of my emergency books of like if it just got really late in the day and I hadn't read something yet, I would read those. So one of them I got all the way through, the other one sitting right over there, I didn't, so I didn't have enough emergency days. And they're both pretty short. I mean, one of them's like 100 pages, the other one's like 150. So that would have been a third of the whole thing if I needed those. And so I got through the shorter one. But yeah, that was interesting because obviously books are different lengths. So 10 pages this isn't me trying to be critical of the process, but it's kind of wild to say 10 pages a day. Because I think I have an example right here. Actually, I have 2 really good examples to illustrate this. If you've watched my videos before, you know that this is, I think, one of the best books ever written. But it has stuff like that. Like, that's a chapter page. This is kind of the writing style. It's really quick reads. And also there are different opinions, I think, on, like, does this count as a page? Or does this count as a whole page? And how you mix that. I tried not to cut corners, but I also recognize that sometimes I obviously wouldn't count that page, these pages. I shouldn't say obviously, I wouldn't count it. Or that page. I would have counted that as 2 pages. And some of those, like this book is easy, I read maybe 12 or 13 pages to try and divvy it up a little bit. You can see the ease of access for that book versus something like this, Handbook of Attachment, which is like double columned like a Bible. 10 pages. So it's, not consistent depending on what you pick. So that's the only one that is like dramatically different in the amount of time that you might commit to it. Progress pictures, quick workouts, they're 45 minutes. I mean, you can go longer. Eating a certain way, depending on the diet you pick, that might involve a lot more cooking. Or involves less depending on what you did. And even the drinking a gallon of water, which I'll talk about in a second. All these are kind of consistent throughout the day, but the books, I mean, someone who's like, I did 10 pages a day. If I did this attachment book for the whole thing, which I think you could, I mean, it's over 1,000 pages, so that's 75 days if you're doing 10 a day, easy. And if you did this every day, this would take a long time, especially if you're taking notes. This could easily take a half hour to an hour a day, depending on how in-depth you want to get with this study, versus a book like The War of Art or something else, which you can knock out in 5 minutes, the 10 pages, depending on your reading speed. So that one ranges wildly. And for me, that's something I've still maintained, reading 10 pages a day. I like that, and I think it's important. And me, like most people who read, have a long list of books that they want to read. And I have too many on my shelf and on my floor over there that I haven't got to yet, which I really want to. And I've decided, I'm going to keep doing this 10 pages a day, kind of indefinitely. My thought is until I'm caught up on the books I want to read, which seems kind of crazy, but I actually, which I can maybe talk about one day, I have a list online that I use on Google Sheets that has every book that I want to read on it. I took like 5 months to slowly just kind of work through it and add stuff. So I actually mean that when I say like I know the list of books that I want to read. Every book that I'm interested in reading at all is on that list. And yes, the books get added, or I find something new for the first time and read it. But I actually know what all I want to read in my life. And so that is something where I'm like, yeah, I see the end in sight for that, and it's always going to be added to. But there are certain ones that I put little asterisks next to, which are really like I really want to get to them, and I'm not getting too far into that description. But point being is I'm going to keep doing 10 pages a day indefinitely until I feel like I have hit a point where I'm caught up enough to go at a different pace. And I've debated, I split that into two things. So I read 10 pages of nonfiction a day still. I try to read 10 pages of fictional or whatever, not even fiction, I have nonfiction by my bed, but let me rephrase it. 10 pages of like growth-based nonfiction. And then I have some like memoir stuff and things like that on the ground over there, and some fiction and stuff that I just want to keep reading. And I want to do 10 pages of that a day too, but it's not a requirement for me. And then I'm doing 10 pages of psych reading related to my field. I've wanted to get a better habit of keeping up on self-study work for my field. And I might shift that soon to a set amount of time versus pages, because doing it in pages, I found myself being like, well, I want to sit and study this topic more, but that's going to take me longer to get through the pages. So I'm actually feeling like the pages are more important than what I'm learning. And so that's good for me to know, where this is probably going to be more effective if I say I just read for 15 or 20 or 30 minutes of this a day, and however far I get. So if it's just me studying a paragraph the whole time, that's okay. Or if it's me blasting through 10 to 20 pages, that's okay. So that's probably going to be a shift soon, but I wanted to maintain that. And I have I have quite a few psych books that I've accumulated that I haven't read through that I really want to. So this will just be another thing that probably lasts for, I don't know, I mean, I'm not going to do 10 pages a day, but I have a couple thousand pages. So I'm thinking quite a few months before I slow this down, or a couple of years. So we'll see. The gallon of water was harder than it had any right to be for me. That was just a pacing issue. So it's easy to keep drinking stuff throughout the day. I would drink some sparkling water. Oh, this is another thing. Like a sparkling water, I did not count. If I had like an electrolyte powder mix, that didn't count. Tea did not count. Like it had to be straight water, gallon water. And I don't know what his rule is on that. I know you have to do water, but people start to change their opinion. Like, well, tea is mostly water, or it's just water, but I put electrolytes in it. I could not go to bed with a clean conscience feeling like I accomplished the gallon a day if I did those other things. So I had a gallon jug that I would just refill, and I wouldn't drink out of it necessarily, but I would just kind of refill my personal water bottle from that every day. And there were plenty of nights where I had like 25 to 30 ounces left right before bed, which I just learned a lot about my daily pacing. I used to drink water more, I guess you'd say more efficiently in the past. So this was really helpful to pay attention to how much water I'm actually drinking throughout the day. And it shifted my mindset now, being a week after, where I'm just assuming I'm not drinking enough. So like if I'm like, do I need to have more water? Yes, just yes all the time. Drink more water. And so that's been helping me to be in a better habit of that. And something I'm going to keep going with. I'm not going to fill a gallon a day and make sure I do that, but I am going to be really mindful. My water bottle is a 25-ounce one. So about 5 of those, I think, is kind of what I'm aiming for. 5 to 6. What's a gallon? Like 128 ounces, something like that. So technically I'd have to fill it up a 6th time. So yeah, I'm just trying to pay attention to that as well, which is good. So some of this I'm carrying over, some of it I'm not. And I know I'm kind of ranting about personal experience, but I do actually think this was a good mental psychological challenge, and it's very encouraging. I mean, doing something daily without exception, and this is where I actually think this challenge is brilliant in its own way, is it's so long that you don't look at it and be like, anyone can do that. I do feel like for a lot of 30-day challenges, people are like, you can do anything for 30 days. I can do this for 30 days. 75 days is 2.5 months. And you will often, like I mentioned before, see a change in seasons depending on when you start it. You're going to end up in 3 different months. Life's just going to happen. You're probably going to hit a holiday. You're going to hit probably some sort of vacation or long weekend. It just sets you up where there's going to be days that are inconvenient. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to do this? And if you fail, it's not easy to restart because you're going to hit that same set of hurdles again. So the amount of time is pretty good, because it's difficult in the sense of the span. And it's disheartening if you have to start over, but it's so satisfying to do it and get it done. And even the days where, so we had a huge like family reunion where I'm talking like these people never, is it the whole family on my mom's side got together, and it was fantastic. And that hasn't happened in a long time where every single person was there. And we were doing this during that time, and I'm like, I just want to be on vacation. And yes, you can make an argument. I was like, well, you're on vacation, just do it and hit pause. There are totally different mindsets for this. I don't live my life with that mindset, because to me that is a cutting corners mindset. I don't care necessarily if you do that. But for me, it's, again, I made a commitment to this and I'm going to follow through. And there are days that will suck because of that, but I just don't want to make room for that. Like, oh, well, this other thing is happening and there's not room for that. So we, of course, were adamant about it. And we tried to find ways to make it easy. And when we were visiting families, it was walks in the morning. Again, it was summer, so it was hot. Try to do morning walk and evening walk. And we would try to invite family to come with us. And that was nice, a couple times going on a walk with people. Or they wouldn't necessarily do the full 45. We'd maybe loop the small part of the neighborhood and they'd head off. But that was nice. Or take that as time to maybe hang out with each other, my wife and I, during the walk. I try to make it more useful than just the walk. And then that was a couple days where I used the easy books to read. Like, we're just getting through the 10 pages, a little bit of going through the motions and doing some of the harder things, and, you know, saying no to coffee when you want coffee and all this other stuff, and alcohol around. I mean, it's a summer family reunion type event. So, you know, some people brought some cool new drinks and I'm like, oh, that would have been nice. And just saying no. But it's really cool to be able to tell people why and what you're doing. And some people be like, that sounds horrible. And other people say, good job. And it's whatever. And it's humbling in the sense of we're choosing to do this. And we're happy about it. And by all accounts, I can't see anything wrong with it. I don't want to do it again. There's actually a couple of phases to 75 Hard if you want to keep going. And he's got this program that by the end of it, I think it's like the Live Hard program, but you have 75 Hard, then phase 1, 2, 3, and it takes like a year total, I think, to do all of it. And I considered it for a while, but I'm like, this is just going to turn into an overly religious task that I don't want to do. And it helped for me, and this is, I think, the useful transitional piece. It helped set a framework. So think about if you're trying to get in shape or you're trying to do something, like, it's really helpful when you're learning a new habit to just over inundate yourself in it and just hit it. This is why people say immersion is good for foreign language, or, you know, if you're learning an instrument, go take lessons. Or if that's, especially if you can't tap into that personal excitement. Like when I started learning guitar, it was the only thing I wanted to do with my entire day. As a middle school and early high schooler, my Xbox accumulated dust because I just never touched it because I just wanted to play guitar. It's like, if you have that kind of focus, which is not me for every new thing I pick up, but that was like just a like explosion for me, then you don't necessarily need this. But like this is a life now, and it's still to this day. Like, if I don't touch my guitar for a couple days, I feel really kind of, I mean, gross sounds not right, but it doesn't feel okay. It feels like a part of me is missing to not have that. So what's nice about doing something so much, just often, so this is a consistency, not an intensity thing. And you might hear that and think 75 Hard sounds intense. It is in its own way, but it's not actually that hard. It's about 2 hours of your time a day, which I know, depending on your life, you're like, that's a lot. But it's not hard. It's just takes effort. So you can do a walk for every workout. You can stretch, like do a yoga routine. You can swim. It doesn't have to be intense like weightlifting or mile running. So it's just about getting out and doing it. It's not really that difficult. The actual difficulty, in my opinion, is doing it consistently without missing a day. That's the hardest part. Everything else, I mean, everyone can do this, right? A 5-year-old can do 75 Hard. It's just being consistent. That's the hard part, and not having a day where you're like, oh no, I missed this, and or, you know, you're out. Because I had a couple days where I was up till like 11 or 12 with people I care about hanging out, and I'm like, oh, I still have a workout to do, and I still like, it's just, it happens no matter what. And I think that's the really helpful tool, is like, this is something you've committed to. it's getting done. And that's the interesting part that's carried over for me. So I had a couple things, which I might talk about in a different video, that I've been really wanting to do in my life that have been being put off constantly. Some of these are all like habits that I wanted to form, and I just am like, there's not really time in it. And doing 75 hard got me very like just amped up and fired up to do it. So I was getting toward the end. We had about 12 days left, and I'm like, I really want to start doing these. It's about 8 items a day that I want to be knocking out. I think 2 of them were weekly, and I just really wanted to get this stuff taken care of. And I'm like, I'm going to make the list of how much time I want to commit to these things a day, and I'm going to have it ready. And I printed it, and I'm like, you know what? And that list takes about 3.5 to 4 hours a day, depending on my pace. It's insane. And I was like, this is going to be hard to integrate into my life. And I'm like, so why don't I just start it during 75 hard and make the last 12 days absolutely insane on my schedule, so that way when it ends, this will feel easier. So for the last 12 days, I did the 3.5 to 4 hours of daily tasks that I want to have as a habit, plus 75 hard. Set the habit of doing stuff daily with no exception would carry over. And I guess I finished that up. I'm almost 3 weeks into this new one, and it's only a 45-day thing that I'm doing now. And I'll reassess it after 45 days. And the idea is to either add more to it in terms of like increasing. So some of it's my music practice, either increasing that, keeping it where it is. Maybe something's decreasing, but make edits, because I want sustainability, not oppression. And for a lot of people listening, you think 3.5 to 4 hours a day of doing certain tasks might seem a little much on top of work. And it is, it's fine. So, but that was an extremely helpful tool with 75 hard, just doing stuff daily. And I've had a couple nights in there that was up till 2 a.m. doing both lists. And it's just encouraging to me of like, you know what, this is really difficult, and I'm going to need to make some personal life changes to make it all fit. And if it just doesn't fit, that's fine. And my wife's a great person at telling me if it's too much or not, and we'll make adjustments. But there are a lot of things that I think are important for people to refocus their attention on. And I don't know what those are for each person, but a lot of us neglect things that we've been needing to do or meaning to do. And I think it's good to get to a point where you're kind of just tired of neglecting those things and you're getting them done. My main thing with this though is I don't do my checklist on Saturday. Now, 75 hard, I had to. Saturday is my restful day. I don't do anything. That's not true. I go to church on Saturdays and I relax. It's supposed to be a relaxing day for me. It's my one day where there's no like work for me. And 75 hard doesn't leave room for that. So we both felt okay doing it for those, 10 or 11 Saturdays. Those are my least favorite days. I did not want to do it. Specifically the 2 workouts. I just wanted to let my body rest. So this new stuff for me, I'm not doing Saturdays at all. They're just completely off the table. So I'm only doing these habits 6 days a week, which I think is good. And Saturday, I just recoup, hang out with people I care about. So 75 hard, I don't necessarily recommend it, but you can look at videos online describing it. The guy who created it talks about it, and it's still a big deal to him. And he'll have people on his podcast talk about it. I've heard a couple clips, haven't really listened to it, but I think it can be a really good thing. And if you want like a huge shift and a revamp, and you're like, I don't really know what habits I need to put in my life, I don't really know what to work on, this one's probably a good starting place. And while you're doing it, you can sit with, whether you're like going to therapy to talk about someone, or you're sitting down and reflecting on your life and what things you need to do, you can add it. And finishing it is such a big accomplishment, and you get to know that, not even for bragging rights, but you can be like, yeah, I absolutely did that. And it can really set a bar for you on what you feel like you're capable of if you complete it, because it is a big deal. I know earlier I said it's not necessarily hard, it's just it's not hard, it just requires effort. It's fine if you say it's hard. That's more of a framing for me to make things easier in life, is that they're not really hard, they just take effort and work. But this is a lot, and I think anyone who finishes it really should be proud, especially if you finish it the right way and you actually do everything on it and you don't cut any corners. Like, that's worth being really proud of, and you don't have to join like-minded people to celebrate that. It can just be for you. And celebrate your own success there. So again, not necessarily a recommendation, but it could be really good depending on the person. So if you're curious about it, look into it. I might throw a link in the description for people to click away into other areas and learn more about it. But it was a good experience. I think overall my mental health is better. I just feel more focused, and I feel very capable of getting things done that need done and setting a standard that I'll keep. And it's not even like a shift in like, oh, I can or can't do this. It's more of a shift of, I know I can and I know I'm capable of things, but the fact that I'm setting standards for myself daily and there's no excuse to not get it done. Doesn't matter if I lose sleep or other stuff, there's no excuse. That's the shift. And that's not me saying you should get in the habit of not sleeping enough. No, it's me saying there's no excuse. So you better be getting good sleep when you can. You better be doing a good job. You better be staying off your phone and this is me talking to me, because you know this is going to be hard. Mondays for me are like 11-hour work days. So I have to do that plus this 4 hours of stuff. And today I did not get up on time. So I've set myself up for a rough evening. But trying to get in the habit of like, hey, you know Monday is going to be a long day. Get to bed on Sunday. And set yourself up for success, because you already know you're not going to bed till it's done. And that's the helpful part. And especially in a personal self-development. A lot of parents do this really well, especially single parents, where life is going on and your kids need your attention. And even if you're not at the office, so to speak, you're working like, 18 hours a day. The reason I like this is because it's by choice, fully choice, and it's you to you, relationship with yourself. It's not because I have someone to take care of. It's I'm doing this to develop me, and hopefully by extension make my family better and people around me better. So officially now the longest video I've ever made. So hope this was helpful. Look into 75 Hard if you want. If you're interested in therapy services, reach out to me in the description. We can talk options, whether that's with me or someone else. Love to get you connected. Love to help with mental health. I think that is, the world would be so much better if everyone just had even a 1% uptick in their mental health. I think we'd see it. So reach out if you need anything. And other than that, I enjoyed getting to talk to people about this, and I look forward to seeing everyone Monday. Bye.